Hi guys, what we're going to do is we're going to explore pattern, and I've taken a piece of paper, it's a regular polygon, and I'm going to mark up the back of it into quarters. So it is 9 across, so I'm measuring 4.5 and 4.5, and then I'm going to draw a line. This is all happening on the back, it's just going to save time later. 12 centimeters, so I'm dividing in half, 6 and 6. Now with a pattern, we're doing a repeat pattern, but we're going to use something that's sort of trending on TikTok, Instagram type things at the moment. So it's quite a simple abstract pattern, but it's quite fun to do. I'm just working with a standard HB pencil, and I'm going to draw some points. I'm going to now draw a line that's connecting the points, and on the left hand side of it I'm going to draw an arc, and then a slightly wider arc and a slightly wider arc. On the right hand side I'm going to draw an arc going the other way. Sort of looks a bit like a gooseberry or a petal or even a leaf. So here I'm going to connect these 2 points, and again I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add another point over here, and you can begin to see what's happening. I do not want to overlap my previous shape, so do you see how it's become distorted into that space? The distortion works quite well, so just roll with it. I might do a smaller one here. So I'm just following the same principle into each of these sections. I'm beginning to connect even unlikely sections like this bit here. See how I can make that line swell and fill that gap. There's a point where it will become very difficult to put a shape into it, so I'm going to just shade that like it's a negative space. Now you could be doing this with pen, you don't have to be doing it with pencil. I just opted for pencil. So you could just fill in with a colour if you chose to, but as it's a negative space I've gone for a dark tone. I'm going to pop another point in down here. It's quite a small one, that one. I might pop a point in here. So I fill quite a lot of the piece of paper with my motif. Now I'm going to actually apply some tone onto here. I'm going to just take any section. So I might start with this one. I'm going dark from the corner into that panel. I'm just getting lighter. Now I'm not doing this with massive care. As long as I work within the line, dark to light, leaving the white of the paper. This is going to create a little bit of volume. I'm going to apply this theory in each case. So I'm pressing hard and I'm getting lighter. I'm going to do that into each section. Right, so you've seen me do that. Now, if you have drawn the cross on the back, that's absolutely fine. You can now cut it out. If you haven't, or you ended up restarting, you might want to measure and cut it. Now, I'm using scissors, and I'm cutting from the heel of the scissor along the line. If you're at school, you'll be able to do this on the guillotine. It will be much easier to measure and cut using the guillotine, but I'm doing it at home, so I can't. So heel of the scissor again. One single cut if I can. Lead of the scissor again. One single cut. So we know this rectangular shape is a regular polygon and it will tessellate in a block like this, in a grid arrangement. But what we want to do is we want to see this motif so it's not just sat in the centre of each rectangle. We want to fill it out and get rid of this negative space, the section that's between this motif. To do this is a simple way to do it. And what we're going to do is we're going to rearrange it. So first of all, I'm switching the pieces over and then I'm taking the bottom ones and putting them to the top. So all the pieces that were in the centre are now on the outside. So from the centre to the outside. So this piece will connect to that. This piece will connect to that. This will connect to this, and this will connect to that. That is the most confusing element of this whole task. So what I want to do is now turn it over. So I'm taking one piece and turning it obviously over, really thinking about what I'm doing, because I want to tape it from the back. To be honest, this is one of those things that until you've done it, you might be going, well, I don't get it. I'm not quite sure what's going on here, but just roll with it. It will make sense as we do it. Now I take little pieces of tape when I'm joining. I'm just going to secure, badly there, secure one piece to the next with the small pieces of tape. I've done that very tightly, so I'm going to redo. Again, small pieces of tape just to secure and hold things in position. And then, using larger tape, got a piece of masking tape in my teeth then, this sounded a bit strange. I'm just securing the whole thing together. Now when I turn it over, I have before had my motif centrally and now it's displaced and quite unusual. But I'm going to fill in the negative space. Remember, one section was quite small, I filled it in with a solid fill. I could fill the whole thing in with a solid fill, but then we'd still have that very obvious section. What I'm going to do is use the same principle as I did when I made the original drawing. So I'm taking the same principle and I'm just drawing in. Now I might connect this one to this one. I might connect that one to this one. So you see what's beginning to happen? I'm losing the background negative space. Now I'm working solely within the image on this space. I'm not going over any of the lines at the outside. So I'm only working in those sections. Now what I'm going to do is in any negative space, I'm actually going to put a new line in here. I hadn't thought of that before. That one was one that would have shading on it. So I'm doing exactly what I did before. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put the shading in, just as I've done on the previous version. So I've filled in and added the tone to those additional areas. Now I'm still left with these odd shapes. Now remember at the start I filled one in with a solid tone. I'm going to do exactly that in all these spaces, an even tone. I'm not doing the blending that I've done when I've worked on the gooseberry-like shapes. I'm just working with an even tone. If you're working with pen, this would be fairly quick to do a solid fill. You could be doing it, like I say previously, with a different colour. So where the ridge, where you've joined these pieces of paper and there's a slight ridge, you do feel that ridge when you're drawing, especially if you're on cartridge paper, which is a little bit annoying. It makes your pencil jump a teeny bit, but just roll with that, that's fine. So I'm going to just fill in all these sections. Right, so I've gone in and I've filled in all the dark areas, so the negative space, this background space. It would look better, believe me, if I'd worked with some colour or some pens, but I've gone for it in pencil. I just want you to see the principle of doing this. The next thing I need to do is I need to either photocopy this, if I was at school, and repeat, and tile it together. Remember, this section is going to match with this section, and so on. These are going to match over here. So what we're going to do, as we're not in school, and you can do this if you've got a device, is take a photograph. I'm going to photograph it and then I'm going to put it into PowerPoint or Photoshop. In either case, I can tile. Right, so I took the photograph on my phone, I cropped it, I've sent it over to my OneDrive, and I'm now going to copy the image. I've opened up PowerPoint. I'm going to close those ugly looking backdrops, and I'm going to paste it in, paste as image. I'm going to resize it. I'm going to drag it across. I'm going to Control C, I'm going to Control V, and then I'm going to position it, and you begin to see what happens. I'm going to copy both of them, Control C, Control V. So I'm now moving it as a pair. Control V. So I've made one row. Now I'm not doing this in any scientific way, I'm just doing it fairly quickly. I'm going to Control C the whole row. I'm going to Control V the whole row. And you begin to see the repeat. I'll just nudge it with the arrow key. I'm going to Control V again. And even in a package like PowerPoint, we can generate a fairly quick repeat pattern. Obviously you can do this through collage on the copier, or you could be doing it in Photoshop, where there'll be lots more functionality where you can edit, add colours and so on. So I'm going to go through the whole process again for a second time with a very different style of drawing, just so you can get a feel for how this process works with the different styles. I've started drawing a kind of angular design with triangles. I started with two in the foreground and then I'm sort of layering backwards. If you see what I'm doing there, I'm trying to work out where one would sit in front of another. The easiest way to do that would be to draw it in pencil lightly and then go over it with a pen on top, rather than have to work out where things would sit in relation to each other. Once I've drawn the main shape in, I've then started working in with a little bit of pattern. If you recall, in the last design I was using curved lines, which worked with the overall nature of the subject matter, which was kind of organic. I'm now adding a bit of solid fill. I've got a paint pen here that doesn't work, so I've just pumped it. It's now like the paint started to flow a little bit. As I work with it, the paint begins to flow. It's come back to life, this pen, so it's become more solid fill, but I quite like the texture in the first one, so I left it. So I continued to work into it, adding some additional solid fill in a different colour, thinking about colours that would work well. You don't need many colours, a couple work really effectively in this sort of design. So I've got some yellow. I've then considered, do I want to leave those panels just as yellow? I decided not to. I've gone back from horizontal stripes, parallel lines. I've added some dot textures. Obviously, I'm kind of doing this fairly rapidly. I'm not taking too long about it because I want to show you the overall effect rather than crafting it really carefully. So I've done my standard thing. I've cut it, I've rearranged it and taping on the back. And then I'm drawing in additional sections, just as we did to fill those negative spaces in the last design. I'm going in, inserting patterns, so I'm going through the same process again into these new sections, adding solid fill, adding pattern and so on. And then when you've finished adding all the detail into the main pattern, I recommend some negative space filling. Here I'm using the white of the paper with a solid black fill. I'm using a Posca. It's a little bit messy, but it's doing the job fairly rapidly, and that's what I'm interested in. So we're getting rid of the white of the paper. There will be no white left in the background. All section will look quite busy and patterned. It instantly transforms the work. This is a top tip I often suggest when we are doing some sketchbooking or drawing or doodling where we lose the white of the paper. Right, so here we are, we've got the original drawn image. It's obviously the pens are running out, it's not particularly slick. You can see how it's translated across as I've brought it in on the OneDrive. I did a mini edit on my phone. I'm going to copy the image. I'm going to go back to my previous presentation. Remember, this is not designed for this type of work. PowerPoint is just a way to record things, ideally. We need to edit fully if we want to do more work with it in Photoshop. So I want to paste it into here. Now, if I right click, I can't just paste as usual. I've got to paste the image in that way. I'm going to reduce the image size, take the corner, drag it down. I'm going to drag it across. I'm going to Control C. I'm going to Control V. So I've got a duplicate. I'm going to put it alongside it. I can nudge it along with the arrow keys. I want to move it around. I need to still, I can see a little gap in between those two sections, so I'm just going to nudge it across. Jump between slides. I'm going to take the two sections, I'm going to Control C, I'm going to Control V. So rather than, remember when we do this in Photoshop, we don't repeat one piece at a time, we repeat the lot. We're going to Control C the whole lot again. In Photoshop we're doing it in layers. But here we're doing it by grouping. And you begin to see what's happening. So very rapidly we are creating our repeat pattern, and we have a record of our process through PowerPoint.